Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this is another combination of sun and moon that was requested. Somebody wanted the sun in Virgo and the moon in Scorpio because I've done moon and Scorpio videos in the past. The latest being the sun in Libra. And there are going to be some similarities with that one that I just did. But I am recording this from the top of my head. I don't know why, but I just like doing these types of videos like that. It feels more spontaneous and maybe intuitive. I don't know. But anyway, we have to look at what the sun represents and what the moon represents, because when we are combining these two influences, and they're both personal planetary influences, we can't just isolate them because the combination really does have a life of its own. The sun is your aspirational self. It's what you want to become in this lifetime. Whether you get there or not is a different story, but whatever those characteristics are, they can still show up regardless of what you actually do for a living, how you end up, sharing your gifts with the world. For instance, my sun is in Sagittarius. So, Sag is associated with spiritual pursuits. Yeah, now I'm doing that, but I haven't always done that. And you can still inject those qualities into your everyday life. I can still be philosophical like a Sagittarian. And when I was a cashier or a retail type of person doing all kinds of things, cashiering, stocking, I still was interacting with people from that philosophical point of view. And the same applies to Virgo. It's funny because my moon is in Virgo and the sun in Virgo manifests a bit differently. So the moon is your emotional nature. In this particular case, the sun is in Virgo and the moon is in Scorpio. And the moon is your emotional responses to life. So this combination is actually harmonious in certain respects because Virgo is earth and Scorpio is water, and they are naturally harmonious. Both earth and water are feminine signs. So there is a natural inclination to tend to personal matters and to have that kind of orientation. Sometimes it can even be a form of like shyness or not wanting to, being more of a homebody versus going out in the public. Now, if your rising sign is a fire sign or an air sign, then you may do that kind of schmoozing, but it's almost like a surface thing, and you would much rather be at home and doing your own thing. You're like a natural introvert. So the sun in Virgo person, Virgo is a mutable sign. Scorpio is a fixed water sign. And Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So there's always an intellectual component with Virgo people. And this means, when I say intellectual, it means people who love to learn. They may be high school dropouts and they're better read than some college graduates. And I bet you there are many people who fit that bill, because graduating from college doesn't necessarily mean that the person is in love with learning. They could just be very ambitious. And this is about loving learning, because that is something that you value. But I will say that it's also about, for Virgo versus Gemini, the other sign that's ruled by Mercury, it's also about learning things that have practical application. So it's not necessarily learning for the sake of learning, although, I'm sure that most Virgos do read or try to find out information, sometimes because of intellectual curiosity that has no practical application. But I'm just saying that Virgo is really about, how can I use this information to better myself? So you might read a lot of nonfiction. In astrology, Virgo rules the sixth house, which is the house of health and your daily routine, as well as the actual work that you do. It can be the workplace, it can be your coworkers, but I'm talking about this service to others. So whatever kind of service that you render unto others, but more on the practical level. And the 10th house is the career house, but it's also that reputation, the status that you have attained through your work. So the sixth house is more nitty gritty when it comes to work. So Virgo individuals oftentimes have an interest in health. And even with my moon in Virgo, I've always been interested in natural, like diet can be the sixth house, those kinds of things like nutrition. And but I think of it always like vegetarianism, herbalism, things that are more what we would call alternative. It's becoming more mainstream, but you know what I mean? Just the idea of drugless therapies. And I make the assumption that that's the case. I see it that way because it's an earth sign, so it's a natural approach to health, including nutrition. And so this may be a particular area of interest for you. And with the moon in Scorpio, there is innate understanding of the psychological, or even we could say the spiritual connection between a person's mood and their health and all of that. So you may be very good at being able to bring those two together, maybe body, mind, and spirit. And I had mentioned with Libra sun having the moon in Scorpio, being a natural psychologist or therapist, because Libra's analytical, and the moon in Scorpio can really, they know what makes people tick. And I think that for Virgo, it's an even greater combination for that purpose. And so that can be really good for people who are looking to be in that kind of field, and you may be interested in psychology. But you might even specialize in eating disorders with the connection to diet. Well, why do people do this? What's really going on? And that brings me to an important aspect of this combination, is that Virgo as a sun sign is, matter of fact. It's very practical. It's funny. I always say, with Scorpio, it's intense. And I always say with Virgo, it's practical. And I wish I could find, other adjectives, but these are the ones that I feel I'm left with. And so people who have their sun in Virgo, they really are very, they can't, well, I shouldn't say they are 100% of the time, because, there might be, if you have your sun in the 12th house, it might not be like I'm saying, it'll be a little bit different, but they tend to be very disciplined, regimented, because of that sixth house connection, that their sun sign rules, in terms of the routines that people have. And there's just something about Virgo that loves checklists, to-do lists, all that kind of stuff. That's something I always joke and say that, that's my idea of heaven, is going into an office supply store. Um, and it's funny because I have Neptune in the sixth house, so it's all like a pipe dream sometimes, but it's still something that I'm attracted to, having the moon in Virgo. So when you have the moon in Scorpio with the sun in Virgo, it may be something that knocks you for a loop, because you're like, why am I so emotional? You might value logic and everything being in its place, but your emotions may be all over the map, that roiling river, or whatever you want to call it, is underneath the surface of that Virgo efficiency, can be overwhelming to you on a regular basis. And you may try to rely on your analytical abilities to get to the bottom of it, and you find that it's just there. And one of the things that I would recommend, if that resonates with you, is that you not try to control it through logic, through even like trying to distract yourself with, sorting out your linen closet or something. That's what that would be the typical approach of a Virgo sun sign. If you have Virgo, Mars in Virgo, even more so. Let me do something. Let me transmute my my anger, or my um, you know uncomfortable emotion, into something that is going to lend itself to practical outcome, a practical outcome. And I think that in general, that's a great idea, but sometimes you have to sit with things. Sometimes you, especially if you have deeply buried emotions. And with Scorpio, as with Pisces, I always think of trauma. So if you did have a background where there was very strong emotions, that came up in your family of origin. And sometimes these can also have taboo subjects like sexual abuse, or maybe even mental, like mental illness, things that are, addiction issues in the family of origin, that tend to create shame within the child, especially because they might be hidden. The adults tell them, don't say anything about this to outsiders. So those kinds of things can cause you to be very secretive about your emotions as an adult. The Scorpio is associated with secrecy. And the reason for it is because Scorpio is also about power and maintaining this control over their situations in life. And even if they're not interfering with other people's life specifically, because that's not always how Scorpio rolls, they're not always going to be domineering, but they can be very self-contained. And so if you find that you're very emotionally self-contained, how is that working for you? Because a lot of times what will happen is that you will take that to relationships, and you will be like this lonely island. And the worst part about it is that other people will not really, that you want to be close to you, will not really understand why you are the way that you are. An example would be, let's say that you're a woman and you have this combination, and you fall in love with someone, and you find it hard to you find that sex is very hard for you because you were sexually abused, but you can't tell that other person that. So that person thinks that they're not that you're not attracted to them. And you may have repressed a lot of that might, you might think the same thing, but you've really repressed a lot of that area of life because you just completely shut down from what happened to you. So these kinds of things, if they're not acknowledged and shared with people closest to you that may be impacted by it, that can create problems within the relationship. So that's one pitfall that this combination can have. If you can get in touch with your feelings, this can be very powerful because you have the sun in a rather detached position. And so it's a nice balance because people who are too dry, they might have a hard time empathizing with others. And with the moon in Scorpio, there is this strong ability to empathize. Now, I'm not going to say that the moon in Scorpio is warm and fuzzy like maybe the moon in Pisces would be. And the moon in Cancer, that's that's a debate that we can have some other time. But I think that that Scorpio as a sign tends to be very self-reliant, and part of that is because you feel this natural pull towards keeping things close to your vest. So that is going to naturally make it so that you have to be your own support system, because how can somebody support you if they don't know what is going on for you? But you have a great, what would be really, that probably would be very appealing and healing for you is shamanism, because shamanism, the indigenous religions, and I would include Wicca. I don't really, it's funny how uncomfortable I am of saying the word witch or Wicca or even paganism. I don't know why. It just kind of makes me uncomfortable. But I do think that that is a Western form of shamanism. Of course, Native American, that's Western too, but we could debate where the original Native Americans coming from Siberia maybe, but in any case, these earth religions can be appealing to earth signs. And then when you talk about the shamanic principle of transformation, the alchemy, magic, magic, what do we associate magic with? Well, maybe with paganism, but I'm sure the indigenous, I'm not, if you can't tell, I'm not well versed in these things, but shamanism, I'm sure there's a magic, there is, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a magical element. But magic meaning that there is something that you're doing to make what you want to come true. Not that it's just randomly dropping in your lap. I'm not talking about that type of magic. And because the moon is in Scorpio, that enhances the emotional power that you can wield as a healer. And yes, and that's another big one, because you may be drawn to the healthcare industry, but that desire for transformation in your patients may lead you to be frustrated by the conventional methods. If you see that they're just, pushing drugs on people and these endless surgeries, and you feel like they're not getting to the root cause, as I had stated earlier, the mind-body connection, but also perhaps the spiritual. And Scorpio, 8th house, that Scorpio rules, Pluto is associated with transformation. And, that's why death is associated with Pluto. I mean, with Scorpio. the death card in the tarot, you know. And but transformation is the actual thing that's going on here. Death is a transformation for sure, but that's not the only one. So yeah, that you can be a powerful healer, and really get to the root cause, because Scorpio always wants to dig deeper. They don't want to settle on the superficial. They're always like, there's more to the story than meets the eye. You may be drawn to emotionally intense people because of this Scorpio moon, because Scorpio's I always say Scorpio's an extreme sign. And it tends to be, you could say black and white, yeah, for sure, but also just in terms of either really feeling something and being connected to it, or being indifferent to it. So that might be like when you get involved with somebody, like whether or not this is a person that you want to be in a relationship with. Now, does that mean that every person with this combination is a great judge of character, and that they pick the right person, they never make a mistake? I wouldn't say that, because if somebody is a Virgo, they could have inner planets in Libra. And let's say you have Venus in Libra, you might be attracted to somebody the way that they dress. You say, oh, that person's, or be turned off to somebody because they wear clothing that you think is sloppy or whatever. And yet you're too or you think a person's good looking, and that makes you attracted to them. But the bottom line is that they are not what they seem. They have another side to them. And it's funny, because even that wouldn't necessarily put you off. Having that moon in Scorpio, you might be attracted to somebody who is a Scorpio sun sign, or what I call trauma bonding. You're attracted to somebody because they've been through the ringer emotionally like you have. And that it's almost like the person with the Pisces, the Venus in Pisces or the moon in Pisces, who's attracted to people who have been abused, or what have you. However, with the Pisces influence, that person may be attracted to victims. You're not really attracted to victims. You might be actually turned off to people that you perceive as weak, because Scorpio really respects power. And anyone who comes across as some kind of a victim is not going to be viewed in a positive light by you. You might have compassion for them, but I don't think you would be drawn to them to get involved with them in a relationship. However, even if you're with somebody who is a survivor and who really embraces that concept of, hey, I've been, to hell and back, but I'm making it happen, and blah, 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 they might still have a lot of wounds that you share, and you can't really, it's like you reinforce those qualities instead of one person being more of the I was going to say like the clean cut type of person. This combination doesn't mean that you're not clean cut or anything like that, but it's just that sometimes that moon in Scorpio craves that sort of pathos, maybe, and any kind of relationship that the other person is very together, they don't have like this dramatic background. You might consider them to be a lightweight or something like that. So you have to, really examine that, because you may get involved in relationships that have this emotional intensity, but they're not necessarily healthy ones. Or even if both of you are okay on your own, you just bring out the worst in each other, because you both have these tendencies. Like, what came to my mind when I said bring out the worst in each other is like when two people have addictive tendencies. And with anybody who has the moon in a water sign, watch out for the tendency to want to, especially drown your sorrows, the presence like alcohol, because the emotions sometimes can be so overwhelming that you want to take the edge off. And for obvious reasons, that can lead to habitual use. So you have to, really look at, how do I deal with my very deep emotions? Do I sit with them? Do I try to distract myself through busy work? Or do I, hit the bottle or hit the bong or whatever it is? How do I deal with these emotions? And doing something, and I was going to say doing something that's healthier, like taking a run or, taking a walk is even better, because you can be more contemplative than when you're running. You're getting into that type A mentality, but still, sometimes you can't run away. Pardon the pun. You have to actually deal with those emotions. Really try to feel your emotions, because your sun in Virgo is going to want to sort them out, characterize them. And even when you go to therapy and they give you these labels, that's something that Virgos love. So be careful of labels. Don't be in love with labels. That still puts you in that mental abstraction. And that's not what the emotions are about. And the emotions are right there, front and center, when your moon is in Scorpio. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.